Welcome everyone to this this call to launch our Rematriation Fund for land recovery. And we're so glad that you're here. My name's Do Hoyer. I'm an organizer with the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. And I am going to open us with a song to start our time this evening. So this is a song that was first written in response to the return of Injuje Wahobe, which is a sacred red rock to the Kanza people, the Ka Nation. And the rock was originally stolen by settlers from its previous place in Kanza land. And in 2023 was formally returned to the Ka Nation, and earlier this year in June 2024 was rematriated on Kanza land at Algawahu Memorial Park in Council Grove, Kansas. So has formally been returned to the Ka Nation. And so this song really emerged out of that act of return of this sacred red rock grandfather to the indigenous people of the land. And it also, I think, can apply to all land recovery and land return. And so I'll just put the words in the chat so you can look for those there. But I'm going to invite, if you would like to sing, you can stay on mute and no one will hear you. But I'll teach this if you want to learn it, and then I'll play a recording so we can settle in through song. And this was written by Terry Grunthayner, the song creator. So it goes like this. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. So I'm going to break that down. Return what was stolen, return what we can. And I'm going to repeat. You can try that with me. Return what was stolen, return what we can. Return to the sacred, return to the land again. Return to the sacred, return to the land. We'll go back to the beginning. Return what was stolen, return what we can. One more time. Return what was stolen, return what we can. Return to the sacred, return to the land. Return to the sacred, return to the land. One more time. Return what was stolen, return what we can. Return to the sacred, return to the land. So that's one part that you can sing. And then there's another part on top. We give back to you. We come home to you. We give back to you. One more time. We give back to you. We come home to you. We come home to you. We give back to you. We come home to you. So those are two parts. I'm going to play just a short recording that will kind of give us a sense of how those parts layer together. And you're welcome to sing along with that recording. And again, this is just an invitation to ground into our intention this evening through song. You're welcome to sing or just receive the song. And I will share my screen so that we can hear the recording, and I'll also show a picture of Injuje Wahobe rematriated at Alguahu Memorial Park.
Mm.
So, here's our song.
Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. We give back to you, we come home to you. We give back to you, we come home to you. We give back to you, we come home to you. We give back to you, we come home to you. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. We give back to you, we come home to you. We give back to you, we come home to you. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land. Return what was stolen, return what we can, return to the sacred, return to the land.
Welcome, everyone. We're so glad you're here. I'm Sarah Augustine, the Executive Director of the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery. And it's my delight, my great joy to launch our land return or Landback Fund, our Rematriation Fund. I want to invite Megan Rhea to introduce you to our origin story. How did this all come about? Megan is in our working group for land return. I'm so thrilled to have you here this evening, Megan.
My name is Megan Rhea. I use she, her pronouns, and I live in the Sugar Creek watershed, homelands of Peoria, Kickapoo, Miami, Alchety-Sakowin, Illini, and many other Native peoples. now called Bloomington, Illinois. And I am involved in the coalition in a number of different ways. I'm part of the Oak Flat Committee. I'm part of the Oak Flat Working Group, the Board Game Working Group, and I am the chair of the Investment Justice Working Group. And those are some of the ways that my other work with the coalition flows into this. I grew up at Cloud Creek Mennonite Fellowship, also here in Illinois. Some of you are familiar with that. And I moved here to Bloomington in 2016 after a time of living in Seattle, Washington, and working for MCC in Bangladesh. And being in relationship through the coalition has really helped nurture a more complex understanding of who I am as a person and what I do as a result. It was around that time, returning from Bangladesh in 2016, 2017, that I first got involved in the coalition, primarily through relationships with people that I love and admire. Some of those folks are on this call, like Sarah and Jonathan. And those relationships have really nurtured me in expanding my own understanding of my identity, to include things like whiteness and being a settler, sort of expanding how I understand myself beyond an identity or a desire to be a good person, and into a more complex view of myself and other people, where I could see that unjust system around me that I was entrenched in, that served to uplift and to benefit me, and where I also was not just a victim but had agency. And it becomes a world in which I cause harm and repair harm. I experience healing, and I am still enmeshed in some of those systems, including the system of private property and real estate. So one present day manifestation of that doctrine of discovery in the United States is this legal framework of private property. Buying and selling and owning a home is one of the most direct ways that I participate in and uphold that unjust system, that unjust legacy today. I bought my house in 2017 before some of those ideals had really fully penetrated my worldview. But last November, I was very fortunate to be in a position to buy a house for my father, and help him get into a secure place because the local rental market was driving him out of his apartment. And that time, I was much more attuned to this experience of the real estate experience, the real estate market and investment, private property, and how in this moment of purchasing and sort of owning this piece of land, I was participating and collaborating in that very system that continues to dispossess Native peoples of their land, even right now. And my own personal experience of the real estate process was a very isolating and objectifying experience. You know, here I am judging houses and properties, giving, doing inspections and trying to figure out what the fair market value of a house even is. At the same time, I'm having to like prove my worth to a bank to get approval for a mortgage. And there are pages and pages of legal documentation that come with those steps, with ownership and with getting a mortgage. And I really felt the dissonance between that experience and the unrepaired harm of this land being stolen in the very first place. And I felt the tension between, this right and good motivation to seek a safe, accessible, and dignified place for my dad to live in the form of private property, but have that land be stolen from its rightful caretakers through the process that started with the doctrine of discovery. And that sense of like this being the closest I would ever get to the land in the legal sense, but absolutely feeling alienated from the land and my community in this process of like turning it into a commodity, this static object that I would project onto it, whatever I wanted, rather than it being, you know, an embodiment of the earth as like a living, breathing entity that I am in constant relationship with. So that discomfort, that dissonance really was sitting with me. And if I have no right to this land and this house, and yet this is the way I know how to care for the people that I love, what do I do? And I had this really tangible longing of wanting to acknowledge the reality of that land and my identity as a settler, not just in a metaphorical, let me, you know, say some words and move on from it kind of way, but really a material, tangible way. And I really recognized that I've heard about other people returning land. I think John has a wonderful story that I'm honored to have learned from at the time. Returning land or a portion of money from a land sale to Indigenous peoples, but that didn't work really for my situation. I wasn't in a financial place to return, you know, the whole value of anything, and I was buying property anyway. What did that even mean? But also recognizing that experience of unjust benefit of benefiting from this broken system, that I, as an everyday middle class person who can't afford to buy a house, and perhaps some of you resonate with that. You have worked very hard to buy a house. As someone who has steady work but hasn't accumulated quote unquote wealth, and maybe who feels precarious in the larger economic system, because we really don't have that communal safety net that comes from right relationship with the earth and with each other. I wondered aloud, what could we do? What role could there be? I wondered aloud to my very good friend Sarah, who happens to be very good at turning ideas into reality, and that is how this beautiful brain trust came together to create the Coalition Rematriation Fund. And I think folks are going to talk a little bit more about discerning the right amount for you, but the median home price in America is $380,000, and we are inviting for you to feel into if a number between 1.5% and 2% feels right. So for a median home price at 0.5%, that would be $1,900 returned to a communal fund, or if you're on the higher end, about $7,600. And just going to go back to that first slide. For me, the feeling is a certain kind of squeeze that is a feeling of discomfort and a feeling of just like a stretch that for me, 1% gave the right amount of squeeze that sort of expressed my longing for repair and right relationship, and also the reality that is the discomfort of being alienated in the way that coming from settler lineages can give, that this disconnection is real in the middle of this isolating, objectifying process of buying real estate. For me, that 1% is just right, and I'm really honored to give that contribution to the Rematriation Fund tonight and invite all of you into that possibility where our routine but kind of infrequent experiences of real estate transactions, whether as buyers or sellers, can have in that process an honest encounter with that discomfort and the unjust origins of the land that we occupy, private property, and our roles in that. And for that discomfort not just to end with us, but to manifest in a real tangible support for Indigenous land return.
Thank you, Megan. I sure appreciate you sharing how we all came together around this issue. I do notice that there are questions in the chat. We're going to have time for questions and answers at the end. As various ones of us are speaking, maybe others can try and respond in the chat. We can do that also. At this point, I'm going to walk us through what is rematriation anyway. This is a rematriation fund. And rematriation, in the words of Sabrina Vaught and Heather Shotton, is a powerful word Indigenous women of Turtle Island use to describe how they are restoring balance to the world. It means returning the sacred to the mother. And in my words, that is the first mother, which is the earth. So rematriation, a really important thing to know about it is that it's not transactional. This is not a matter of transferring money from one person to another or from one entity or another. It honors and is grounded in relationship. And in fact, this rematriation fund, this land return fund, is designed to buy land with Indigenous communities that we are in relationship with. So we are working with those that we are working in campaigns, and we're working for liberation together. We are helping those that we are in relationship with. And I shouldn't say helping because that's not really right. We're joining with many others in purchasing land and returning it to Indigenous peoples. So rematriation empowers land repair and land return. And we say land repair and land return because land return alone isn't enough, especially if it's land that has been depleted or polluted. And so this is also an opportunity to restore the health of land. Rematriation means partnering with Indigenous peoples to free sacred lands and soils and water and habitat from systems of oppression. So I want to be really clear about that too. Indigenous peoples have a relationship with the land that is not necessarily in keeping with the way the dominant culture in our society engages with land. And so freeing land itself to be managed in a way that is more holistic is a big part of what rematriation is. So in the Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery, we follow a reparative process. So we are seeking repair across a variety of different dimensions. So repair means acknowledging wrong and working to heal that wrong. On an individual level, this means acknowledging unjust benefit. So I often say, many of you have probably heard me say this before, we did not create the systems that we're born into. All of us were born into these systems. And some of us are the beneficiaries of these systems, and others of us are victimized by them. So when we acknowledge benefit, what we're able to do is enter into right relationship with those folks that have been victimized by the systems that we live in now. So instead of only noticing harm, we are committed to act. Instead of only noticing harm, we are committed to act also through financial reparation. So we are moving resources to the side of those people who are disadvantaged or oppressed. And this is essential because our liberation is bound up together. We actually depend on each other in order to be able to live in collaboration with the spirit of life and in keeping and following with the systems of life. So why return land to Indigenous peoples at all? According to the World Bank, about 36% of remaining intact forests are on the lands of Indigenous peoples. Indigenous communities, it is estimated, safeguard 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity. And forests on Indigenous lands are better maintained with higher preserved biodiversity than those on non-Indigenous lands. So Indigenous communities have a long track record of caring for land in relationship in a way that is unique in our world. So I was taught by a young Nez Perce sister this prayer: thank you for this land, our body. Acknowledging that the land is not a resource to be conserved or a resource to be exploited, but actually a living system, and that we are part of it and it is part of us. It is our body, our very body. And that cosmology or understanding of reality uniquely equips Indigenous peoples to care for land. So I'm just going to say a few more comments about the model that we're following here. In this model, everyone can participate. Often when we think about land return, it is the people who have significant wealth who are able to participate in land return, or those who have land that they can contribute. In this model, ordinary families, congregations, and people are able to pool our money in order to help, accompany our Indigenous relatives in purchasing land. And I want to say just a note here about who those folks are. If you go to our website, you can see repair partners that we've had over the years, many Indigenous groups that we're in relationship with, where we're working on liberative campaigns together, legislative campaigns, community-based campaigns, and all the folks that we're in relationship with, we endeavor to consult with who is in the position to be ready to purchase land. And so what we have the opportunity to do is join together in relationship with our Indigenous siblings in the return of land, returning land to their care. So this model honors how people from the middle class and the working class participate in wealth accumulation through private property, and offers a place for wealth redistribution. So I would at this point like to invite Jonathan Neufeld to take us through the next steps.
Good evening, friends. Yes, I'm Jonathan Neufeld. I'm one of the co-chairs of the coalition, and I'm calling in from the southern part of Manitoba, so your Canadian kin. As Sarah mentioned, this fund is a mechanism to collectivize the efforts of congregations or individual households to support the land back visions of various Indigenous communities that we know and are walking alongside with. And so on the website, we outline at least 2 ways that one can imagine thinking about contributing. The first being that when you are in the process of purchasing or selling property, a home or agricultural land, that one might consider donating 1/2 to 2% of the sale purchase price to the fund. In the United States, the national average for home appreciation is 3% per year, and in Canada, it's 6.1%. Donating even half of a percent when compared to the accumulation of wealth from home land ownership over a decade is a small contribution that can make a very big impact. A second way we want to invite imagination is to be thinking about a personal wealth tax. In the example on our website from the Seattle area, there's an example of that, the paying real rent movement. We define wealth as income plus assets minus debt. So a family or household has wealth when their assets and income are greater than their debts. And you may imagine yourself or see yourself as holding wealth if you are sitting here free from student loan debt, or your home is paid off, or you have and hold inheritance, or you have a monthly retirement income that exceeds your needs. So what might an annual or monthly contribution to some land back campaign look like for you? Well, a percentage of income is one way to think about it, or maybe another number that holds symbolic significance for you. For example, if you live where I do in Manitoba, you could imagine paying $18.71 a month, or $1,871 a year, which could serve as a powerful reminder of the signing of Treaty 1 in 1871. All that to say there's no hard or fast line here. But what is invited is a commitment to make part of your financial plan the writing of historic and present policies that have limited the capacities of Native-led initiatives to have a secure land base for their communities. John States has been a big part of this and a mentor for me in this movement, and so I pass it now to him.
Thank you, Jonathan. I'm going to talk a bit about something that I call the Zacchaeus principle. In 2012, my family decided to sell my grandparents' farm near my hometown of Mountain Lake, Minnesota. For me, this is where the rubber hit the road. I knew the farmland is Dakota homeland. So I decided to return a part of my land inheritance to Indigenous people working for land justice. But the question was, how much? I thought of the biblical story of Zacchaeus, the Jewish tax collector who became very wealthy from collecting taxes for the occupying Roman Empire. When Zacchaeus decided to follow Jesus, he had to make a big decision. And he decided to return half his wealth to the poor and 4 times as much to anyone he personally defrauded. This is the Zacchaeus principle. If you benefit from an oppressive system and you decide to follow the love ethic of Jesus, then you must make amends to those oppressed by that system. To me, the lesson was clear. I needed to return half the amount of my land inheritance to Native people working for land justice, and most went to Makoche Ikichupi, which means land recovery in the Dakota language. But there is no one size fits all, as others have said. The right amount will vary according to the circumstances. So I'll give an example. My brothers and sisters received the same amount of land inheritance that I did, but their circumstances are different. Importantly, my wife Marcia and I do not have children, and they do have children. I kept in relationship with my brothers and sisters on this issue, and whenever there was news or pictures from Makoche Ikichupi, Dakota Land Recovery, I would share that with them. But I didn't directly ask them to return money to Dakota Land Recovery. Then in 2021, 9 years after the land was sold, something happened. Makoche Ikichupi was looking to purchase a small organic farm in our hometown of Mountain Lake. They needed $150,000 above what they had to make it happen. So the Mountain Lake repair community met and we sprang into action. We began fundraising among ourselves, among our friends and connections, and among our families. All my sisters and brothers responded. I have 2 sisters and 2 brothers. $1,000 from one, $5,000 each from 2, and $10,000 from one. Each returned the right amount for them in their situation. The overall result was the Mountain Lake Repair community raised $202,000 to help Makoche obtain the property for its second village, which is called Hokwoju Otuwe, Village of Vibrant Growth, now producing food for Dakota people in Mountain Lake. The Coalition to Dismantle the Doctrine of Discovery is inviting you to return a portion of what you have to Indigenous Landback initiatives, to Indigenous groups with whom the Coalition has relationships. And so the question for each of us is, at this time, what is the right amount for you? And I'll leave it at that. And I'm not sure who I turn it to. Do I turn it to Sherry or Sarah?
I'm back. I would love to hear your questions, and I will ask the people here who are part of our our working group to help me respond. Sherry is also here and part of our working group. And of course, Sherry, I'd love to give you an opportunity to make some comments if you'd like to. Looks like you're having dinner.
I'm actually making dinner, and I just put a piece of cheese in my mouth. I just want to say we've been hoping to do this for a long time with the coalition. I'm one of the co-founders with Sarah 10 years ago, and this has been a dream that we've had really ever since the beginning. And we feel like not only are we as a coalition at the place of doing this, we also feel that the church is at a place of doing this. That there's many people of faith who really want to join in a meaningful, and what was the word you used, Megan? It wasn't sacrificial, it was robust or pinchy way.
The squeeze.
What they're ready for the squeeze because they know that squeeze is part of our mutual liberation. And we feel like the church is at that point where so many want to participate in this. I confess that when we started, I direct messaged Sarah on our chat and said, "There's so many people here." And to me, this is a sign of the readiness of the people of God to stand up together and to join in a more robust and beautiful way with our Indigenous siblings.
Thank you, Sherry. So I have seen some questions in the chat and I've tried to respond to those. I wonder if there are additional questions that you have. Please raise your hand or you can come off mute and just ask and we'll be glad to respond. If there are none, then I will go straight to the chat. Let me just give you a minute to see if there's anyone who would like to ask a question. All right, I will start with the chat. So the first question that I see from Jenny Ann, I can't see your full name in the chat. Oh, Jenny Ann Horst Martz. The question is, how does this Landback initiative fit together with other Landback initiatives? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. Our intention is to join together with others who are seeking to purchase and return land. Land is expensive. And so it's very likely that we'll be joining our efforts to others, including the efforts of land trusts and others who are working with Indigenous peoples, tribes, communities, et cetera, to purchase and return land. So we don't see ourselves as an island. We very much intend to work together with others and to contribute funding to land return efforts, campaigns and efforts. So that's the first question that I saw. The second question is this a one-time gift? Is there a relationship with Indigenous people as a part of this? So is it a one-time gift? I think that is up to you. Of course, we would love for people to give us I mean, from my point of view, this is possible every time there's a real estate transaction. If you're buying property, if you're selling property, if you're renting property, there's an opportunity to contribute for land return for Indigenous peoples. But of course, it's going to be up to the donor. And the question was, will it entail a relationship with Indigenous peoples? So I want to just say really clearly here, I'm an Indigenous woman. I'm a Tewa woman from New Mexico, and I'm thankful and grateful to be in relationship with you. So you will be in relationship with me. However, we're not a traditional charity where we provide sort of meet and greets between Indigenous people and our donors. In fact, the opposite. We work as colleagues together with Indigenous people. And so what you would have the opportunity to do is to join in liberation movements with our Indigenous partners. And that's most often how people get involved and actually grow in a relationship with Indigenous people. But I'm willing to be in relationship with you any at all time and to the extent you would like. Gerald, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I have been looking at your webpage while, multitasking while I listen. Sure. And this is very welcome. thank you to all the people that are putting thought into it. My wife and I have scratched our head about how to respond and how to do this kind of thing. My one question as I was looking over this, and now I've lost it on screen. Oh, here was where it says you under assessing a tax for your contribution, and then clicking on that and then down, you may hold wealth if, and then so on. The fourth bullet point is you have monthly retirement income that exceeds your needs. I would just say, as someone who's gone into retirement recently, that's such a mystery. And so as you keep working on this and maybe add to the website, because when you retire, they ask, well, how long do you expect to live? I don't know how long I'm going to live. I don't want to, it'd be great if I could time things to give away everything, right down to when we die, but I don't know how to do that. And that's the biggest challenge of figuring out a retirement income. How to budget and on and on. So I would just say, if there's anything you can do to flesh that one out a little bit more as you keep working on this, that would be welcome. But
thank you, Gerald. Oh, I appreciate your comments, and I so appreciate your heart. And I also want to say, there is really, all of us feel this need for financial security. It's really important. We just really feel committed to it. So I want to tell you about my own story a little bit, just so that I could be fully transparent with you. I have multiple sclerosis, and I have no retirement. I have zero retirement. My future is living in low-income housing on Social Security. That is my commitment to economic justice. And so I just want to say, it's possible to live in this world without fear. And I will not live with fear. What I will do is work to my last breath for the liberation of my people. And so it's, Gerald, you have to make that determination. Like, how much do you need to feel safe? And I want to tell you that I feel safe. I feel absolutely safe having nothing beyond income. Why do I feel safe? Because my faith is in all of you. The only security I have in this world is community. That's all I have. And I am willing to raise my family with that intention, understanding that there is no amount of money that is ever going to make us feel safe. The only thing that causes us to have safety is relationship. And I really appreciate your comments, and we will spend some time thinking through how we can address that. Okay, Moji, I see your hand.
Hi, and I am an Iranian American indigenous person from the other side of the planet, trying to decolonize in that larger sense. And I have the privilege of knowing Sister Sarah and Brother Jonathan. And I believe that for those people in the Turtle Island who have a chance, who have a privilege of trying to do something to correct a historical genocidal wrong, that's something that I really believe it should be embraced by my white, especially by my white brothers and sisters. Like Sister Sarah, I live on absolute poverty. I have a vow of poverty and service. I'm a Sufi monk, and I have no retirement, and I've given up everything. So I really love the idea of creating a way, as in this case, for people who live on stolen land to actually give back that which they can And that's something that I really encourage my brothers and sisters, in this country especially, and in Canada. Thank you.
Oji, thank you. Yeah,
Thank you
we
for
really
what you're doing.
appreciate your comments. Thank you. And so I want to just go to another question here that I see. Would the land become sovereign native lands again? Okay, so I'm going to try and explain this as briefly as I can. Indigenous people in the United States do only have limited sovereignty now. So indigenous peoples, all the tribes, their land is held in trust. It's owned by the federal government and it's held in trust by the federal government. So we're not talking about getting into buying back land and giving it to the federal government. Although if a tribe asked us to do that, we would probably do it if they were our partner. What we are talking about is purchasing land in the open market and giving it, transferring it to indigenous communities for their use. All of us live in a capitalist system where we have private property. So we're talking about purchasing private property and transferring that private property to indigenous peoples. And this is a form of wealth redistribution. Most of us who are in the middle class carry our wealth and our property, and what we're doing is redistributing some of that wealth. John.
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, this is an issue for Indigenous people and for those living on reservations. At the end of the day, the reservations are not owned by the Indigenous nations. They are held in trust and owned by the United States government. I'm not going to speak to the Canadian situation. And so Makoche Ikichupi looked at this situation and decided to become, this is a Dakota organization, a nonprofit organization. And so when groups contribute for land purchase to Makoche Ikichupi, they own the land as a nonprofit, like a church owns land, but it's not individual ownership, it's collective ownership. And those of you who have gone to one of the Dakota villages in Minnesota, the Makoche villages in Minnesota, know that, usually before you go onto the land, you give a gift of tobacco to acknowledge respect for Dakota land and for Dakota people and for Dakota ways. And so the land is being taken out of the buying and selling cycle. The land has become sacred and common to the Dakota people. Now, it's only one small village at a time, but this is one way that at least this Indigenous organization is addressing that issue. That's all I have to say on that.
Thank you, John. Nathan, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm a product of a Mennonite community in northeastern Montana. And my father didn't farm. He became a missionary. And so my grandparents homesteaded subsequent to the Fort Peck Reservation Allotment Act of 1913. And so having freed a lot of land for white settlers, a pile of Mennonites moved in, some of them from Mountain Lake, Minnesota, some of them from Saskatchewan and Canada. I will come into inheritance of this land when my father passes away. He's 98 years old now. So this is the Fort Peck Indian Reservation, but your website, of course, indicates, and you already mentioned this verbally, we will follow a repair partner model by engaging with community we already are in relationship with. So if you're not in a relationship with the reservation land in northeastern Montana, is it right to contribute funds to this rematriation fund and sort of not move the money to where the stolen land already is going to be? In other words, we're gonna have to dispose of the land. And so what do you have maybe a mode to get into relationship with new tribal communities or not, perhaps?
Well, we certainly have partners in Montana I don't know the exact geography of where you're talking about. And right now what we're doing, Nathan, is we're launching a fund. This is a collective fund so that we can help Indigenous peoples to purchase land. And I certainly hope that we will grow into having the ability and we actually have worked with congregations and others to help figure out how to return land itself. So if you're the owner of land, that would be, I would say, a matter of sort of building relationship between whoever wants to donate land and whoever the recipient would be. But that's really not, that's not what we're doing here tonight. And I'm not saying it's beyond what we could do. But right now, what we're talking about is our Rematriation Fund. So Nathan, I hope we can be in touch and would love to connect you if that's what you choose to do, if you're going to return land. And if we seem like the right people who could maybe help you, we'd certainly love to connect you with folks in Montana. We do have partners all over the place. We're in
Fort
relationship.
Indian Reservation, headquartered in Poplar, Montana.
Okay, well, I would be happy to be in conversation and discernment with you about that. What we're doing here is talking about purchasing land for
I
Indigenous.
understand. It's just that, would it be appropriate for us to sell the land, donate to the Rematriation Fund? In other words, then the Indigenous community from which we stole the land doesn't get the benefit of the rematriation.
Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying. And I think that requires some careful discernment. So speaking for myself, Nathan, I've lived on the Yakima Indian Reservation for 18 years and have spent 18 years working on rematriating land to the Yakima Nation. That's not something that is simple, quick, or easy. It takes time. And so every context is different. That's the context of the Yakima Nation. I don't know what it is like in your context. So it would certainly be something worth talking through and discerning.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, I also saw a question in the chat that asked, is this just in the United States or what about Canada? And I want to hand it over to my brother, Jonathan Neufeld, to take that one.
Sure. I can say that, like, when you go to the website, you'll see that the donation invitation is US based, and I am very interested in and already am working on the idea of having a fiscal sponsor that could be a landing place for this kind of initiative in Canada. I'm not aware of one. If there is one that we could already come to know and partner with, I'm open to those suggestions. But right now, I am in the process of trying to figure out a fiscal sponsor possibility for here in Canada, because I do believe that the questions here are the same questions that our friends on the other side of the invisible line are experiencing. Work in progress.
Thank you, Jonathan. We certainly intend, because our coalition does not acknowledge the border. That is to say, we have coalition on both sides of the border. We really hope to be able to participate in land purchase in Canada as well. Okay, additional comments or questions?
I think there's some more in the chat, Sarah.
Okay, why don't you read them out, Megan?
Lydia says, I'm excited by this program, but I'm wondering if you've received or heard any criticism that giving money for land purchase or paying rent perpetuates a system of land ownership / privatization / commodification, and how do you respond to that?
Thank you, Lydia. I certainly appreciate that question. And, you know, I'm just going to break it down from my point of view. My people are suffering right now. We have the lowest rate of home ownership of any group in the country. We have the highest poverty rate. We have the lowest life expectancy. And so among many other indicators, many Indigenous families live in poverty, and Indigenous peoples have been removed from our lands as a result of US policy towards Indigenous peoples. And so from my point of view, trying to repair that is a priority for those people who are alive right now and suffering right now. And I, you know, this is my life story and my heart story, but also as an adult in my life, working on land return in an Indigenous context has been, I've just spent the last 18 years working on that. So, I mean, I care a lot about it. And I would love to live in a world, Lydia, I hope this is recorded, so I guess you're all going to hear me say this. I would love to live in a world where we didn't have private property. And the fact is, I can't wait, and I can't ask my people to wait until we live in that ideal world for us to have justice. We need justice right now. My people need justice right now. And one way that we can participate in seeking that justice is by walking with Indigenous peoples who are seeking land, like Makochi Kichupi, so that they can build communities of hope, like the community, oh my gosh, in South Dakota, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name, where they're trying to buy blocks of low-income housing so that they can have low-income housing for their people right next to their center. They cannot wait. Those families can't wait until we live in a society with no private property. I would say private property is a core value of Americans, folks in the US. It's enshrined in our Constitution. I'm certainly committed to working towards a world where that's not the primary target. And in the meantime, there are families who need access to land, and so we want to accompany them. Megan, if you see other questions, go ahead and read them out.
I see a question from George and Karen asking, are land back initiatives intended to be confined to one's locality?
So defining land back to one's locality is problematic for a coalition like us, because we are spread across Mexico, the United States, and Canada. And so what we're trying to do is join dollars together, merge dollars together so that we can make significant land purchases with our partners. And so, I mean, I think this is a question that comes up quite a lot, but what I think we have to think beyond our own communities and watersheds to make significant change. And so often, you know, I hear this a lot too. People say, well, you know, I feel responsible for conservation within my own watershed, but not really outside of that watershed, when in fact, you know, the resources that are extracted globally have a massive impact on Indigenous peoples overseas, and our consumption, or our society's extraction as the basis for our economy impacts people all over the world. So we can't just care about the people that we know. We have to be able to care more broadly than that. And so, and I do think there may be a distinction here between land return, so that is land that's owned and returned, and contributing to a land back fund. So I think that's what I can say at this point about that.
And I'll add that for many of us, the dispossession and the relocation has been so extreme that there aren't Native peoples here actively working for land return in our localities. And this allows us to expand our imagination of what that repair and relationship looks like.
The other thing is that it really takes significant wealth to be able, or significant land to be able to make that land return. And we want everybody to be able to participate regardless of wealth status, or where you live, or, you know, we can all participate in justice in this way. I want to just ask my co-committee members here if you'd like to make some closing comments. Megan, why don't we start with you, since you started us off, and then Jonathan Neufeld and John.
I am just profoundly grateful for this opportunity to do this work in community. And I want to just like emphasize that that's a beautiful like way of participating in the actual repair, is not to do it by myself in isolation, but to do it in this community. And I'm so grateful that all of you are here and a part of it. And I welcome you with questions if you want a conversation partner for discernment in whatever way. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
I'm grateful to see some Canadian kin in the room. I'm particularly hopeful that we're going to be able to connect after this call and make some plans to work together to realize this vision for our neighbors here, who we already know are moving forward on plans to have land on which to reconnect with their story and tradition and culture and beliefs. And we do well to come behind that initiative.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I would just like to say that as many of the questions that have been put forward and questions that are in people's minds, this is complex. But I also recall the words, I think, of Martin Luther King Jr. Let's not be defeated by the paralysis of analysis. We can keep thinking about what to do, but here is an opportunity to move in the right direction. Sarah and Jonathan and Megan and others, we do not have all the answers. But we believe that we are moving in the right direction. And the invitation is to join Sarah and join the coalition in this effort. Yeah, so that's what I have to say.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to all of my friends here and all of my relations, all my relations. We are absolutely connected to each other, living on this world and in mutuality and interdependence. I'm thankful for you. Each one of you had the opportunity to do who knows how many things you could do this evening, and you're choosing to spend your time with us. You're choosing to spend your life energy and your time here with us. I thank you for that. Thank you for choosing to be part of us and for choosing to listen, contribute to this vital conversation. You are precious and you are needed. We need you. We want you. Regardless of whether you contribute to a Landback Fund, we just need you in the coalition and we want you. So appreciative of your being here and all the ways that you contribute and support us and participate in campaigns. We just appreciate you. Thank you, everyone, for your time and for being here. Good evening, friends. We're so glad that you are willing to watch the recording of our rematriation event. A few questions have come up in the week since we originally recorded that session, and we thought we would answer them here in a short addendum, Q&A addendum. Megan Rhea is going to host our Q&A.
Welcome. Our first question is for John. Does the practice of land back come from a place of guilt or shame?
I don't think so. I think you probably, most of you, all of you are probably in the same situation as me. I think my ancestors did not directly participate in the genocide, forced removal, and stolen land from indigenous peoples, nor did I directly do those things. But I clearly benefit from genocide, forced removal, and stolen land. And so the motivation for me comes more from a longing for right relationship with the land and with the original people, and a longing for healing for myself. And so I think it's mistaken to think that the motivation is guilt. If I felt like I was responsible for personally taking the land from someone, I would rightly feel guilt. But I think in my situation, the motivation comes from a longing for right relationship and for personal healing.
Thanks, John. Our next question is, I want to do land return to a local tribe. Does the coalition work locally?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. We, as a coalition, don't work locally, but if that is the focus for you in this discernment, we have a few things that you might be interested in considering. Local tribes may not be in the position to receive a land transfer. Your property may not be suited for them, or a property might not even be a property that they want or can use. So you need to be asking that question of the local tribe that you're in relationship with. You also may be giving them land that may be in need of a lot of rehabilitation and ecological restoration, which takes a lot of money and time and to repair, and so that needs to be factored into the discernment in relationship. And so for these and other reasons, it may make sense to see the land and then donate the proceed to sell the land and then donate the proceeds from that sale to a Landback Fund, where your dollars join with other people's dollars. That will enable tribes to make a much more sizable and appropriate land purchase for themselves, which may not be local to you. This pooling of resources may not have the feel-good vibes of giving land your family has loved to a local tribe, but we invite you to consider collective action over individual interests, resisting the individual sort of impulse in this discernment process. But in all of this, a big guideline is repair must be driven by the injured party rather than the person of privilege.
I would also like to note here that our coalition will host in 2025 a monthly coffee hour to discuss land back. If you have questions about land back pertaining to your specific land, or if you're interested in something that you feel was not covered here and you'd like accompaniment and co-discernment, we'd be so glad for you to join our coffee hour. Our coffee hour is the first Monday of the month at 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, and 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's every single month. Members of this working group will join you to talk through your questions about land back. You can register for the coffee hour on our website's calendar page. So just go to our website, which is at dismantlediscovery.org, and select calendar, and you should be able to register right there on the calendar to join us for coffee hour. Thank you so much for your interest. We look forward to walking together on this road of justice for Indigenous people and especially for land return. Thank you.